We're going to look at how to interpret correlations and regressions. We're not going to look at how to do them. We simply don't have time or brain space to do that for this course. But we're going to look at if you run across a correlation or a regression in a reading, in an article, how do you interpret that? How do you understand that? All right, so we are looking, when we are looking at correlations, we already looked at them when we were studying causality. Remember, we had that correlation does not mean causality. Just because two things move together doesn't mean one thing causes the other thing. So we're still really not getting into causality here. When we look at correlations, though, we're interested in answering 4 questions. So the first is there a relationship? What is the direction of that relationship? What is the strength of that relationship? And is the relationship statistically significant to a threshold that we've decided? Remember, we always decide our threshold. So that could be 90% confident, 99% confident. So your p-value could be less than 0.1 or less than 0.01. Okay, so we can start to answer the first 3 questions, start to answer them at least, by just looking at the data. So I think too often we jump to doing tests with data and forget to just take a look at it and visualize it. So let's just take a look at this. So this is, we would do this together in class, but last year's class, I got everybody to give me their shoe sizes and their height. And then I created a scatter plot. So you can see on the x-axis, I have shoe size. And so these are men's regular sizes. And then I have the height in centimeters. Okay. So I plotted for each student in the class a little dot. So can we say, just looking at it, does it look like something's going on here? And I would say, yeah, like it looks like there's some sort of a thing going on. Okay, so what I did is I used my fancy statistics calculator to calculate a correlation coefficient. Coefficient meaning essentially the number. So this number is 0.81. So remember we talked about correlations are always between -1 and 1. -1 would be perfect, like a straight line going down, like this direction. 1 would be a line going up this direction. So we have a coefficient of 0.81, and the significance is P is less than 0.001, so less than 99.9%. Sorry, more than 90. We're 99.9% confident that there's something going on here. Okay, is there a relationship? Yeah, I would say that there's some relationship going on. What's the direction? Well, it's positive, right? First of all, because the sign is positive, it's not negative 0.81, it's plus, positive 0.81. So there is a positive relationship. What's the strength of that relationship? Excuse me. So there's not really like a threshold that you get to when all of a sudden you have a strong relationship. And so I say generally, and I really do mean generally, there's so many factors, but let's say for our purposes today, we're going to say anything over 0.5 is, considered a pretty strong correlation. So here we do seem to have a strong correlation going on. And then is the relationship statistically significant? Well, I normally go with 95% confidence. So if the P is less than 0.001, then I am at least 95% confident. I could be more. So I am saying, yes, this is statistically significant. So then substantively, what does this mean? Well, it would appear that there is a statistically significant relationship between someone's shoe size or between shoe sizes and heights. And we found this out by getting a sample from the class. Okay, so let's try this with a more complicated example. So we're going to go back to that PEI data set that we used, and we're going to formulate a hypothesis. So let's try one. Maybe I think that, so we've talked a little bit about the Lipstick hypothesis and this idea of wealth leading to democracy because people are mobilized to expect more from their government. They have the resources to participate. So let's take a look and say I predict that GDP is related to PEI index. So my concepts are wealth is related to quality of elections. The way I operationalize that is GDP per person or per capita purchasing power parity. And I think that's going to influence the perceptions of electoral integrity index, which uses expert perceptions to look at the quality of elections. And then I would get into some discussion about why wealth and democracy tend to go together. So the first thing I'd want to do is, maybe the first thing I do is maybe look at some histograms just to see how these two variables look. So let's go over to my fancy dancy computer thing. So let's look at the density. So this is how many times each observation shows up. This GDP. You can also look at PEI index. We've looked at this before, I think. There's a nice little normal curve going on. Okay, so then I could draw a scatter plot, and I'll just show you what the computer does. So this is the scatter plot that they show, essentially showing that, just based on looking at it, it would appear that something might be going on here between the GDP per capita and the perception of electoral integrity. All right, so let's analyze this. Let's just copy this into our document. Okay, so now we can run an actual correlation on the computer. And again, I'm not going to show you how to do that, the logic behind it or the calculations behind it, just because it is a bit too much to cover in this course. So essentially, when I get this output, it's just telling me this is my correlation coefficient, so it's 0.56, and it says that my p-value is p is less than 0.0000, and they obviously round to 4 variables, so it wouldn't be 0, like completely 0 at the end of the day. There'd be a number down here somewhere, but p is less than 0.0001 for sure. Okay. So let's go back over here. I ran it on my computer and I got 0.56 is my correlation coefficient, and p is less than 0.0001. All right. Is there a relationship? Yeah, it would appear so. What direction is it? It's positive. So as GDP goes up, so does PEI index go up. So as wealth goes up, so does the quality of the election. What's the strength of this relationship? Well, it is above 0.5, so I'd say it's a pretty strong relationship. And is it statistically significant? Using my threshold of 95% confidence, I am definitely 95% confident that this relationship is statistically significant. It's not just happening by chance. And so I can say, yeah, there's some relationship going on between PEI index and GDP per capita. Okay, let's just delete this and we'll do another example. So I am going to predict this time round that the quality of an election will increase voter turnout, or there'll be a relationship, a positive relationship. So my logic here is that when elections are being run to high quality, people are going to feel more confident that their vote's going to count as intended, and so they're going to actually end up going out to vote. And so there's a variety of different research, some that the Electoral Integrity Project did, for example, that looked at electoral integrity and voter turnout. Okay, so let's take a look at those variables. So here's my voter turnout variable for each country. So the density, nice little curve going on there. And then again, we're using PEI index. Let's draw a scatter plot. So again, on my x-axis, I have my perceptions of electoral integrity index. My y-axis has voter turnout. And then each little dot is a country. Okay, so does it look like there's much going on here? I'm not seeing much of a line there. I see just kind of like a cloud of random points. But our correlation can confirm that for us. So let's do our correlation. And what we see here is the correlation coefficient is 0.07, and P is less than 5. So let's just take a look now at our questions. Is there a relationship? Doesn't really look like it. What's the direction? Well, there's no real relationship, so there's no real direction. What's the strength? very, very, very weak. Like it's 0.07. And is it statistically significant? It, yeah, definitely doesn't meet the 95% confidence threshold that I've decided on. So not much going on. There's some really cool research you can look at it about this relationship that we would expect to see between quality of election and turnout. The reality is, like, even dictators hold elections and they have high turnout. And also the best way to improve turnout is to make voting compulsory on pain of punishment. So you can have terrible quality elections but still have 100% better turnout. So there's a lot of things going on there that maybe my model's not capturing. So that is correlations. Again, not the logic behind how you're doing it, but if you see one, this is how you interpret it. Is there a relationship? What's the direction? What's the strength? And is it statistically